Hello there in TV land, YouTube land, internet world. I am Eddie Mercado, joined by Vic Rodriguez with BloodyElbow.com. Zane Simon is out this week doing his family thing, so you're going to have to deal with our ugly mugs as we kick through these two fight cards that we have for New Year's Eve. Crazy year of mixed martial arts. We got a Rizin openweight Grand Prix that's been going on. The quarterfinals happened earlier this morning, and then we have a World Series of Fighting New York City card that has 4 titles on the line. So joining me is Vic Rodriguez. How are you, sir?
They know who the fuck I am, man. Let's just do this.
I'm with it, man. I'm with it. All right, so yeah, let's just dive right into this. We're going to try to smoke through these as fast as we can. We don't have a lot of odds, but we can kind of hypothesize what the odds might be or should be. But let's just kick right into this Rizin card. They have an open weight Grand Prix. Vic, what are your thoughts on the open weight coming back?
I don't know, man. I mean, as far as if we're looking at it as spectacle as opposed to sport, then I guess it's okay. And I mean, in small doses, they do this once a year, maybe once or twice. It's not really of any major consequence affecting the MMA landscape. So, I mean, I guess it's fine. It's not anything too crazy. It's not exactly my cup of tea the way it's being done necessarily, but I can't complain about it either. I mean, it's just good, crazy fun from Japan, so there's not much you can ask for.
Yeah, I like it. It's 2 rounds, 5 minutes apiece. If it's a tie at the end of that, they can go to a third. No elbows, but you can kick to a downed opponent, which I like that trade-off personally. But so in the I guess the remaining heavyweights is Mirko Cro Cop taking on Baruto, who is absolutely massive. Cro Cop just TKO'd King Mo very impressively. I thought he stuffed a takedown. This was earlier this morning, by the way. He stuffed a takedown, cornered Mo, and just started unloading some left hands, dropped Mo, ground and pound, and it was over. Did you get a chance to see that fight by chance?
I did, yeah. And I mean, it's definitely not what I expected, but that's a hell of an opening round fight. I mean, that's what made it so compelling. See a guy who's still definitely got it, and a guy who we had a lot more questions of because of his being older and Cro Cop. And then that happened because that's Japan. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. How do you like him against Baruto? Baruto's freaking huge.
Baruto's huge, but I don't really see him being. I mean, he's not Kosaka. Cro Cop isn't Kosaka. He's not just going to let himself get manhandled like that. So I definitely think that not only his fight IQ, but his ability to use range, I think he's just going to go for another legendary head kick knockout, and that'll be the end of that.
Yeah, I think Cro Cop is just too fast. Even though, Cro Cop's further along in the twilight of his career, his hands are still pretty damn fast. And I think he's going to give Baruto fits. I think this might be the first time Baruto's actually getting hurt in a fight. So you got to take Cro Cop here, I think. And if there are odds, they're going to be in Cro Cop's favor. So also we saw Amir Ali Akbari take on Heath Herring in Heath Herring's prolonged return to mixed martial arts. What did you think of that?
That was kind of brutal because you look at a guy who hadn't fought in over 5 years. I think it was 8 or 9 years since he last fought, and he took a hellacious beating. But I mean, it was sad to watch for a while. But then he was able to come back and really make a fight out of it. Not really what you want to see, because I don't like seeing a guy take too much damage like that for no reason. But hey, man, listen, he acquitted himself pretty well in the end. Who knows? Maybe that shakes the cobwebs off and he'll be able to come back for another few fights. Again, that's entirely up to him and whether or not he feels up to it and if his health allows it.
Okay, now he's taking on Valentin Moldavsky. What do you think of that matchup?
That's going to be a big problem. Moldavsky is very slick. He's very, very good with his timing and his use of range. I think he's going to be pretty good at avoiding the takedown, at least, maybe later on in the fight, and being able to, even if he does get taken down, be able to survive well enough off his back to not take as much damage. Like that drubbing that we saw Herring take in that first round, I don't really see that being replicated in this fight. So it's going to be a different set of dynamics for sure. He's very savvy with his defense. He hasn't really been pushed physically in a lot of his fights, as we saw that Ali can do in some of his bouts when he's facing, especially considering he's fighting an opponent that's not necessarily smaller, but doesn't have as much meat on their bones. Moldavsky should, on paper, at least be the favorite, but you never know, man. This is Japan. Crazier things have happened.
This is Japan, and that's the thing. That's my main cause for concern is Moldavsky's given up over 20 pounds in this one. So
yeah, it hasn't affected him in the past, though. But then again, I don't know if he's really faced the same caliber athlete that has the kind of wrestling base that he does. So it raises another set of really interesting questions, and it's definitely worth watching.
Yeah, and with this being an open weight heavyweight fight, don't even think about betting on it.
No, don't bet on any of these fights on this card at all. Just don't. If you do, I mean, seriously, you really need to get help. I think Eddie, you probably have that gambler assistance hotline number on your Twitter page or something. So
yeah, definitely check that out if you need help.
Like big flashing lights and shit.
Yeah, so the marquee matchup for this Rizin 4 openweight Grand Prix tournament will be Gracie, who's 3-0, taking on Tatsuya Kawajiri, who is the personification of experience. I mean, this guy has fought absolutely everybody. He has won in every type of way. He's lost in every type of way. I mean, this is like the ultimate litmus test for Gracie. What are your thoughts on the matchup?
Well, Kawajiri's got almost 40 professional fights, versus a guy who's only had 3. Now, granted, you come from the vaunted Rickson system, although he didn't really start training with Rickson as intensively until just a few years ago. But still, he's been pretty much everywhere. He's done so much in the submission grappling world. I just don't know how well that's going to serve him once the game of punchy face is involved, and he seems to handle the weight cuts pretty well. I don't think he strays too far from being at his target weight, whereas Kawajiri is just we've seen him be pretty good with his boxing, and we've seen him absolutely smother with pressure when it comes to his wrestling. Whether or not he's able to keep Crone down for very long and what he's able to do when that happens, that's another set of situations entirely, because it can spread out into different things. I don't see him keeping him inside control and beating him up from there. I don't see him hanging out very long in his guard and getting any effective offense. In fact, that's probably where he's going to be at his least safest. If anything, I could see Crone easily taking the back, and starting to work from there if that is the case. I don't really see many avenues for Crone to win unless Kawajiri gets careless. Like, there's a lot of things that Kawajiri has to do wrong for this to happen. But again, Crone has really shown a lot of growth. He's shown a surprising amount of just real savvy and just the spatial awareness. Everything that he brings to the table that he does well really has been able to shine, especially that last fight against Takoro. I did not see that finish coming, and it was gorgeous to watch. So he could certainly do something like that again. I don't see any reason why not. It's not a matter of whether or not it's possible. It's a matter of whether or not it's likely, and it doesn't look very good in his favor.
So you're picking Kawajiri?
Smart money's going to be Kawajiri, but I'd like to see Crone pull it off. I think he probably has what it takes, but again, the odds would have to be stacked against him by the fact that his striking is not where Kawajiri's would be, and the dynamic athleticism that Kawajiri brings along with his size and weight may also be another set of factors. So I kind of have to favor Kawajiri here just because of the fact that this is really, the way the fight game kind of goes.
Yeah, it's definitely a coin flip in my opinion, but I'm going to lean towards youthful exuberance over the high mileage of Kawajiri. And we actually have odds for this fight. Kawajiri is the favorite at -145 down to -139. And then Gracie is +105 up to +111. Now, the interesting thing about that is Gracie opened up at +170. So the money has been coming in on him, whereas Kawajiri opened up at -230 and has dwindled down to -145. So
here's my question. Is that good enough for you to actually go crazy and actually put something on? That's the thing. Like, either way, it doesn't make as much. You know what I'm saying? Like, I kind of feel like Crone should be a bigger underdog here.
Gracie is not a sizable enough of an underdog for me to recommend picking him. And Kawajiri, -145 is tempting, but in Japan, no sir.
I agree. When we say this, that like in Japan, it's like, number one, you have at least my interpretation, just so we're absolutely clear. Number one, the fact that you're dealing with a ring, not a cage, which may not seem like as big a difference to a lot of fans, but believe me, to a lot of fighters, it really does. Number two, the fact that you're dealing with the rule set that is not the unified rules, kicks to a grounded opponent as well as knees, and I believe stomps as well. Am I wrong on this?
Yes, sir. Stomps is legal.
Well, then there you go. I mean, those are other things that we're not considering here sometimes when we look at some of these bouts from Japan. So, or at least when it comes to Rizin. So keep that in the back of your mind when if you're thinking of putting any money on this action, because that will certainly influence a lot of these fights.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, moving right along, World Series of Fighting. They have their 2016 grand finale. They're headed to New York City, Madison Square Garden Theater. New Year's Eve, 4 titles will be on the line. Justin Gaethje is defending his lightweight belt against Luis Firmino. Supposed to be Joao Zeferino. I'm not sure exactly why that did not play out. But you got John Fitch defending his welterweight title against Jake Shields, which should be an exciting grappling affair. That's right, exciting. I said exciting and John Fitch in the same sentence. Marlon Moraes defending his bantamweight belt against newcomer Jose and Aldo Silva, if I said that right. And then Dave Branch, the 2-time champion, will be defending his middleweight title against Lewis Put the Guns Down Taylor. What are your thoughts on this World Series of Fighting card?
Well, the World Series thing, I mean, I have a bunch of thoughts, but I just want to run through them very quickly. And number one, regarding the card itself, first off, do not sleep on the undercard at all. They've got a lot of really good names on that undercard and some really interesting matchups. Just from what looking at here, Bruce Boyington, pretty exciting guy, taking on Andre Harrison, very, very exciting fighter. Vagabov is finally coming back, and he's taking on Bruno Santos, the Brazilian veteran. He's been out there, and he's been doing some great work. Jake Hune is taking on Smelinho Rama. That fight could be absolute crazy fireworks if it happens. If they fight the way that we've seen them characteristically go at it. Jared Rosholt's going to be on. Not the most exciting guy, but he's taking on Caio Alencar. He might make something of a decent, somewhat exciting fight out of it. Rosholt, talented wrestler, good fighter, just not always the most aesthetically pleasing person. If you're a fan of technique, then certainly your guy to watch. That's just the undercard. That's just that alone. And again, really very much worth paying attention to. Unfortunately, you're going to end up with the fact that you're going to have this glut, this overcrowded main card. I'm guessing World Series is banking on all these fights not going to a decision, because that would be absolute death. The fact that it's going to be on New Year's Eve, even though it will be in the afternoon, it will be competing with a college football game that's hotly anticipated. Good luck with that. And the fact that it's going to be at Madison Square Garden in the theater, not the actual arena, which is fine. It's not a knock. It's just to make sure that anyone who wasn't aware of that fact shouldn't expect to see a giant area like where the UFC event was fairly recently. Getting to and from Madison Square Garden on New Year's Eve, logistically, it brings its own set of problems as well. I don't know why they're doing this, why it has to be specifically on Saturday. They should have done this for Friday, but hey, I'm not going to get in their business. It's a tough sell, and it's a shame because, again, this card is pretty stacked as far as World Series of Fighting talent goes. This is one of the best, just in terms of name value cards, absolutely the best, without a doubt. And they deserve better, and the fighters deserve better. And I kind of have a bit of a problem with this because it really deserves. These guys deserve a spotlight, and they're just not going to be getting it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn. I think I like the fact that they canceled an event or two to kind of put this major card together. Enough of the nickel and diamond. They finally went all in, got some weight, and they're giving it to us. And I mean, it's on New Year's Eve. I mean, there'll be plenty of people just randomly in New Year's something to do. Why not go check out some fights? Now, it is going to happen a little earlier in the day. I think the prelims start at 1 p.m. and you can find them streaming online at bloodyelbow.com. And then there's a NBC Sports Network card. Now, the World Series is usually on this channel, but the main card will actually be on NBC Network Television. So the NBC Sports Network card starts at 2:30, and then the actual NBC main card starts at 4 p.m. So it should all be wrapped up by 8 o'clock for sure, probably even sooner than that.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot the NBC bit, so I'll be setting my DVR accordingly. But I mean, and this is probably a minor quibble here, but I do have to disagree with the fact that canceling the cards was a good thing, because that's 2 cards in a row. That's money out of the fighters' pockets. Some of these guys are waiting on these opportunities to fight, and that's probably a separate discussion for another time. But I feel a little uneasy with that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it really does kind of put the fighters in a position where you're either going to fight or you're not.
Yeah.
You know, you take this or you don't fight. But the World Series has been pretty cool about letting guys take fights outside of the promotion. We saw that with Jake Hune. You know, he said, hey, I need some money. What's up? And they're like, well, I can't really get you a fight now. Well, he's like, well, I can go fight in Alaska. And they're like, do it up. And so that's what he went to do. So who are you taking in the Jake Hune fight? Or Smilinho Rama or Jake Hune?
Well, you know, that's the thing. Jake Hune, he's certainly been working on his striking. That last fight that he took in Alaska, while I do appreciate World Series granting him the exception to go ahead and do that, I think that was actually pretty good on their part if they weren't going to have him fight. I do have a bit of a problem with how much damage he took against a local guy who he was expected to beat rather soundly. And I don't know how well that's going to fare against a guy like Rama, who's definitely far more explosive and a deceptively good athlete who is simply just lacking a lot of polish. You know, we saw when Rama took on Blagoy Ivanov, you know, just his inexperience really caught up to him, and it was absolutely out there on display. Granted, it was against a Sambo champion, a guy who's just been a terror everywhere he's fought. It's not that much of a shame there, but I gotta wonder, man, if he's been able to rebound quite well from that. Even the Rama that fought Ivanov would probably be able to give today's Jake Hune a lot of fits. So I'm starting to wonder how that would work out. In terms of wrestling, for example, I think Hune would certainly not be at any serious disadvantage. But when it comes to striking, when it comes to shifting phases and keeping everything together in a cohesive mixed martial arts game, I kind of think that Rama has everything a little bit more together, and he's got the patience and the cardio to outlast Hune. So I'm gonna have to side with Hune with Rama on this one. Again, conventional wisdom and smart money probably would say that I'd have to go with Hune on this, but I'm actually gonna roll the dice on Rama.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely making a lot of sense with that. Rama, it should also be noted, Rama's coming down from heavyweight. He's always been somewhat of a little or smaller heavyweight, but this fight's going to be at 205. So who knows how Rama's going to look, you know, in the new weight division. And Jake Hune, man, the guy, I love the dude. Like, so much fun to talk to. There's a great interview with him on Bloody Elbow right now. Go check it out. Real good stuff about him getting licensed through the Athletic Commission in New York City and how it was kind of a fiasco or whatnot. But the dude just likes to have fun, and you really see that in his fighting style. You know, he comes out and he just makes it a fun fight. It's always going to be competitive with Jake Hune. But yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards Rama here just because he's proven he's got a good chin. He's proven he can thump. But the fans win in this one. I'm picking the fans in this one. Just tune in. If you're going to tune into an undercard match, this is the one to watch.
You're a man of the people, Eddie.
All right, let's keep it on moving. So next up, we have the Who's Tough Enough bout, right? This is Shane Crutchin and Jeremy Mahan. They are U.S. military veterans, and the World Series was running this promotion to find out, you know, which branch had the toughest guy. And the card got canceled, so they ended up taking these guys and putting them on this card. What are your thoughts on this, man? You think the fans should tune in for this?
I don't know, man. I mean, I know that Glory does this every once in a while. They'll bring in veterans and stuff and do that sort of like branch versus branch type thing. I'm not a real fan of it. I'm not really partial to either. You know, I'm not invested in either one. I got tons of friends that have been from different backgrounds militarily, but I don't really. I'm staying away from this one, to put it nicely.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, the guys, like, as far as fighting goes, Crutchin's a Gladiator Challenge Explode guy, so he'll probably have a little bit of a home field advantage, and he's already had one fight in the World Series. But Mahan, on the other hand, he actually got his last fight was a TKO victory in Bellator. So I'm not exactly sure where they're going to stand. I'm going to pick Mahan just because he comes from a different circuit other than that West Coast scene that's been a little suspect. So I'm going to pick Mahan here. I don't know if you got a pick on this or not, but there's not much to go on with this one.
Okay.
All right, so next up, we got Jared Rosholt, who will be making his World Series of Fighting debut following his somewhat controversial departure from the UFC. He got the boot after a 6-2 run, which surprised a lot of people, but didn't surprise others because he doesn't have exactly the most exciting style. He's a guy that'll lay on you and grind on you and incite boos, if you will. So he's making a splash against a lesser caliber opponent than he has been fighting in Caio Alencar. Not sure how to say that, but this is interesting.
You got it right.
Alencar?
Yeah.
These guys, man, Alencar is, I feel like this is a huge step up in competition. It's his first fight in the U.S., and he's a pretty good grappler, but I'm not sure it's going to be enough to thwart off the 3-time All-American Oklahoma State wrestler and Jared Rosholt. So I have to pick Rosholt here. If there's odds, I assume he's the favorite and probably way inflated than it should be at a heavyweight, but I'm picking Rosholt. And hopefully he gets a finish here. That's what I'm really looking for.
Well, I'll tell you what, don't hold your breath. I mentioned Alencar being somewhat exciting. His finishes have mostly come due to striking. He does have a few submissions on his record. A lot of it has to do with him, implementing top control and then wearing his opponent down. He won't have that benefit here. Rosholt is, of course, and yeah, you know what? I don't think he should have been cut from the UFC. I'm going to put it for you the way Joe Rogan talked about John Fitch when people called him boring. It's like, dude, this is a reality. This is what's out there. This is what is possible. This guy can wrestle. He can take you down, and he can pretty much do whatever the hell he wants. And if that means, it always takes two. People always talked about when Tyron Woodley was going through a Strikeforce run, and he got a couple of decisions that weren't exciting. It's like, okay, but the guy on the bottom, is he trying to get up? Is he trying to work off his back by strikes or submissions? Like, what are they trying to actually get done as a counter? It's not just the guy on top. So, I kind of got to wonder here, I don't see Alencar having too many ways of winning this fight, but if he does, I'm pretty sure it'll be dynamic. The problem is he's going to be taking on a pretty big task of dealing with a very big guy, and I don't just mean tall because Alencar is slightly taller than Rosholt, but I mean a guy who's got a lot of mass on his frame and who knows how to move and use that. I'm going to go obviously with Rosholt here, but I think that actually an Alencar finish, especially some kind of explosive one, like some kind of crazy jumping knee or something like that, would certainly not be out of the question. I just think it's going to be a matter of him establishing the pace early and trying to touch him up, taste his power early, and try to use that first before even thinking of, well, I'm going to defend the takedown and then strike.
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely Rosholt seems to be the clear pick here, but who knows? It's heavyweights, right? So, all right, moving on. I mean, it's we got the first title fight of the night. The 2-division champion David Branch is showing us how it's properly done. He won his middleweight title. He's defended his middleweight title. He won the light heavyweight title. He's defended his light heavyweight title. And now he's going back to defending his middleweight title for the 3rd time. The utmost respect for that. That's how it's done. For anyone that wants to be a multi-division champion, that's how it is properly done. Guy, he's taking on Lewis Taylor. He is a guy who seizes every opportunity that is given to him. He's coming off an incredible 2nd-round TKO of top prospect Phil Hawes. I feel like he really put it on. He outclassed Hawes on the feet and hurt him, caused Hawes to shoot in and leave his neck exposed and hit him with the high elbow guillotine, and it was a wrap. Very exciting fight here. What is your assessment?
Yeah, here's the thing with this. Lewis Taylor, here's a fighter who's been bouncing around different places, between Strikeforce and Bellator and, other regional shows. And then he finally finds a home in World Series of Fighting. And, he's done quite well for himself. He's actually really sort of hitting his stride at middleweight. But Dave Branch is just one of those cats who's been operating ever since he got bounced from the UFC. It's like he hit this other level very quietly. And he's accomplished this feat of being not only a 2-division champion, and granted, you could say what you will about both of those divisions and their standing in World Series. They're not the most robust divisions. And, I mean, it is what it is. It's not Branch's fault, but his talent has shown in his performances and the way that he's been able to go through these fights. So, Taylor still a bit raw to me. I don't think he's got everything as together as Branch does. I mean, the guy can take a hit, but he can also crack a guy very, very easily and turn the tide of a fight with just maybe one or two punches, regardless of what round it is. So I kind of see, the fight being competitive early, but then Branch sort of drifting away and then eventually taking this, most likely by submission. Just very good with his top control, pretty decent cardio for a guy his size, or at least with as much with the frame that he's got, and just the experience and the veteran savvy that he's been able to accrue during this period of time has been really a very big benefit to him. So I'm going to have to go with him on that.
Yeah, I feel like it's a really tough sell to kind of argue a clear path of victory for Taylor here, and I like him. I think he's a fascinating personality. I think he stands for a good cause. But I just think he's outgunned, and excuse the pun, but just outgunned in every facet here. The question for me is, how sustainable is this two-division thing for David Branch? That's what I want to know.
Well, again, I mean, they're not very, very well fleshed out divisions. So, I mean, this is going to go on until basically he decides to leave at this point. I mean, what else are they really going to do? How many middleweights can you name off the top of your head that are in World Series of Fighting?
This is true.
I mean, I can name more light heavyweights, but even then I'd have to struggle for some. I'd have to probably consult some website source. So, it really doesn't. If this were Bellator, or if this were like ONE FC, I'd probably have more of a problem with it.
Yeah. All right, so up next, we got Marlon Moraes, the reigning World Series of Fighting bantamweight champion, taking on Jose Naldo Silva. To me, this is sort of what they did with Shaman Moraes when they brought in Shaman Moraes to fight Marlon Moraes. You take out this aggressive fighter from the regional scenes in Brazil, someone who is dangerous and can definitely hurt someone, but doesn't exactly have the pedigree or hasn't faced the caliber of opponent that Sergio Moraes has faced. Marlon Moraes. So I feel like it's going to be very similar to that. I think I can see Marlon ultimately turning to his grappling to get the submission victory here. But that's my thoughts. What do you think?
Well, you know what? I mean, the thing is that much like the Shaman fight, I mean, the problem with Shaman was that he was a guy who was mostly a stand-up fighter, and he was going to be in an MMA fight with someone who is so much more well-rounded than him, but could also match him on the feet. And pretty much what we saw was that, once he started to pull ahead with the standing portion of the fight, then it was right to the ground and it was a submission, just catch and it was done. So I don't know really here, the situation still stands with Silva being another guy who hasn't really fought the caliber of opponent, or whether that's in terms of skill or athleticism that Moraes really kind of brings in. So I have so many questions about how that would go. Now, the guy has looked fantastic in some of these fights, but again, because look at who he's fighting. I mean, is he a big fish in a small pond, or is he, maybe just better than some of these cats who aren't that great? So I don't know, man. Again, there's so many more questions about Silva and what he can do. I don't think this is going to be – he's not fighting a scrub, but Moraes definitely has everything to win on this one. So it just kind of is what it is.
Yeah, I feel like the World Series really are running out of opponents for Moraes. Like, I'm not sure what they're going to do after this. They really need to start adding to the depth of that division, or maybe talk about Moraes moving up to 145. I'm not sure. It just seems like he's just running out of people to fight, and that's a good problem to have if you're him, right? That makes your stock go through the roof. That makes you a hot commodity. But I don't see how anyone could pick Silva in this one with any seriousness. All right, so moving on, we got Vic's favorite fighter, Yushin Okami, returning to the World Series of Fighting. He didn't do too hot when he came over. He had a bit of a rough run, and so what he did was he went back to the Japanese circuit and took 2 fights over there to gain a bit of traction. 2 back-to-back finishes also, and now he is back in the World Series of Fighting promotion, taking on a guy in Paul Bradley, who was also, well, not also, but he will be making his World Series debut. Now, Paul Bradley came over from the Bellator promotion and just had an absolute phenomenal showing against prospect Chris Honeycutt. I mean, he came out, it was a rematch. The first time they clashed heads, it was ruled a no contest. And the second fight, Bradley came out and absolutely destroyed Honeycutt. It took 40 seconds. He just started throwing his hands, hurt him. And once he had him down, he pounced on him and mauled him. He looked absolutely phenomenal. Bradley has shown his explosive power. He has shown a pretty stellar takedown defense. And, Okami, he really has not shown too much in the twilight of his career. So, I don't know. I mean, Okami has never been one of my personal favorites to watch. I respect him, but his style just isn't exactly crowd pleasing. And, he's a guy that likes to grind. He's a guy that likes to pump his jab. I wouldn't say pump, but he definitely will throw a jab periodically. And I just can't see him getting I cannot see him getting Bradley down. And I actually see him struggling with the explosive power of Bradley. So I'm gonna pick Paul Bradley here. I think he is just too much of a hoss, basically, to let Okami dominate him or do his Okametry, as I like to say.
Well, it's not a terrible assessment here, especially since Okami doesn't have much behind the jab as is. Like, he'll, use it, gauge his distance, use his range, and kind of like really see where the opponent's timing is. His boxing is purely functional and simple, and it's fine. It served him well, but problem is his boxing defense is also kind of a question. And Bradley, I don't know. I mean, Bradley's kind of, we've seen him be able to close a distance in a somewhat surprising manner. Certainly not like a Tyron Woodley type thing, but
right.
Something kind of similar in the sense that he's able to do it if you underestimate him, you're certainly going to be paying the consequences very quickly. Now, we've seen him have that sort of fight-ending power against, Chris Honeycutt, who can be hurt. He can be hit with a couple shots and really, falter pretty quickly. But maybe the same thing could be said for Okami. I mean, we saw Dave Branch put him out, and that was pretty brutal. I don't doubt that Bradley could do something similar. The question is whether or not Bradley wants to go that route. Then again, you don't really know if he wants to out-wrestle Okami, who also has some really good wrestling chops. It's a matter of using that MMA wrestling, though. That's really what it comes down to. And I think that Bradley has adapted it far better. I think that his ability to switch positions and find more dominant situations to put himself in is much more refined than Okami's. And, I don't really see that. Certainly at the beginning, he's not going to get a takedown off the bat. It's going to take him a while to get to it. He's going to have to work for it, but he's eventually going to get it. And once that happens, it's just going to be a pretty long slog until either the stoppage happens due to strikes or time runs out. So, I'm not saying that Okami's done. He's certainly not shot, but he's not the guy that we would have maybe thought he could be a couple of years ago. And it's just it's a bit of a shame, but I just don't see him. I don't favor him in this one.
Yeah, Okami really had a harsh fall from grace. I mean, he went from being pretty damn competitive against top flight competition to now he's fighting Paul Bradley.
Yeah, well, Anderson Silva turned into Shang Tsung and stole his soul. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? He broke that dude, Yeah.
The big thing with Paul Bradley for me is his deceptively nimble footwork. I mean, it comes from that alliance style. I mean, he is a big dude, but he doesn't move like it. He has really, really just agile footwork for a decent-sized guy. And I think that might be the X factor in this one. So I'm definitely taking Paul Bradley here. And I can't see Okami winning. Maybe a split decision, but I'm not buying into it. And I don't think that should be before Marlon Moraes either. I don't see why that's
I think it's a matter of keeping people in their seats. I mean, I don't see neither one has like a New York connection or sells tickets. I don't get it either.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, moving on to the co-main event, the World Series of Fighting welterweight title. On the line, John Fitch looking to defend for the first time against Jake Shields. Both these guys, grapplers. What do you think?
I don't know, man. I got to think that Jake Shields has to be the guy who wins this. And I mean, if we saw what he did against Damian Maia and what that looked like, man, I got to think he's probably just a step or two ahead of John Fitch and able to do that. Now, when it comes to all fights start standing, and I got to say that Fitch certainly would have an advantage there, but he is getting a bit, he's getting slightly slower. We saw that in the Dennis Hallman fight. We even saw that against, oh my goodness, what's this? I'm drawing a blank on his name, the Brazilian gentleman that he fought.
Paul Yaris? No.
No, not Polaris. No, oh my God, the guy with the Black Zillions
Joel Zeffirino?
I'm looking it up now. No, it wasn't Zeffirino. It was way before that. It was, I'll tell you right now, Marcelo Alfaya. This is way back in 2013 when he first came over to World Series after the Berkman loss. Even there, he was starting to look a little slower with his stand-up and his striking. So I don't know. I'm not really. I can't put 100% stock in that being the greater advantage either. But as far as transitions go and everything else, he certainly seems like he's able to integrate his striking in a smoother manner to get to his grappling. But just once it actually hits the ground, I mean, how do you go against Jake Shields at this point? I can't do it. And I think the world of John Fitch. I mean, I was a fan of his when everybody hated him in the UFC, and I'm still a fan of his now. I actually, from a technical standpoint, enjoy watching the guy fight because, like we said before, the same quote that Rogan used, the man is the man is a reality. This is what's going to happen out there. This is what's possible. And John Fitch is that guy. But at the same time, so is Shields, and I don't necessarily see them either one submitting each other, but I think we're going to get a really fun grappling match. So if you're a fan of that, you can count yourself lucky for that. DVR it for that at least.
Yeah, that's fair. Definitely going to be a good grappling. I hope they don't just stand there and try to trade. I don't want to see that. Nobody wants.
It's going to be a sloppy kickboxing fight. Nobody wants to see that shit.
This is like you said, Jake Shields definitely has to be the favorite here. He has proved to be the more effective grappler. I mean, he out-grappled Dan Henderson. He beat Tyron Woodley. I mean, the dude is he beat Damian Maia. You know what I mean? Like, this dude just has it going on the ground. And I feel like with John Fitch, as he gets older, he seems to be telegraphing his takedowns a little bit more, leaving his neck exposed a little more. I can see Fitch getting submitted here. I really can. I think I can see this going to a decision, but I can also see Shields getting a submission. I can see him grabbing a hold of a neck from a sloppy takedown and just taking it home with him. But I don't know. It's hard for me to get excited for John Fitch. I'm not a John Fitch fan. I like him as a person. I think he makes a great story. But he never had that style that I just was so thrilled to watch. But I definitely understand why people do. The technique is there for sure. The drive is there. The ambition is there. Yeah. But I just feel like he is fighting a better version of himself. That's just
I'd have to disagree there because I don't think the grappling styles are not as similar as a lot of people might think. When you start breaking the thing down, past the initial stages at least. So, but I do understand what you're saying in terms of being that controlling grappler. That's definitely true, and I do think that Shields' grappling is just more dangerous when it comes to actually being able to end a fight as opposed to actual control. So it may be oversimplifying things by a bit, but it's kind of what it is.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Shields is a finisher. He takes his techniques and finds a way to get it done. And I think that's the big difference. I think Shields should be the favorite in this, probably not by much, even though Fitch is the champion. Who do you think should be the favorite in this?
Well, I'd probably say that Shields should be the favorite on paper, at least, especially his recent with some of his recent wins being maybe more notable than some of Fitch's. But, who knows? With the odds makers, it's not about who we want or who we think. It's about where the money's flowing. And that's really what influences everything in the end.
Very true, very true. Well, that brings us to our main event of the evening. Justin Gaethje, the undefeated 16-0 World Series lightweight champion, taking on Luis Firmino. Firmino's he doesn't play. Like, he comes out, he will throw crazy haymakers at you, he will grab a hold of you, and he will hold on. Gaethje, on the other hand, is an absolute wild man in the best of ways. He's got the heaviest right hand in the world. He's got the heaviest leg kicks in the world. I think he's finished 3 people inside of the World Series of Fighting with leg kicks. The man is no joke. He trains with Trevor Whitman. He trains with all those guys up there in Colorado, Pat Barry, Brandon Gertz. I mean, what's not to like about Gaethje? I mean, he's just a fighter's fighter. Like, he gets in there and he just goes for it. Sometimes to his own detriment. He definitely takes way more punishment than he should, and he probably could. But he makes it fun, and he definitely gives the fans their money's worth. So I'm excited that he's going to be on NBC network television. I feel like this might be his coming out party. I feel like Luis Firmino is tough. I feel like he's got heavy hands, but I feel like he's hittable, and Gaethje hits too hard. So I got to go with Gaethje here, and I definitely think he's going to get a TKO finish. What are your assessments?
Well, a couple of notes on Firmino here, because I don't want to sell this guy short. And I think it's important for people to know just who exactly it is that we're talking about, what we're dealing with. Here's a guy who's fought. I'm just going to look at some of the names here that he's fought, regardless of win or loss, all right? He's fought Imanari, Luis Acevedo, Tatsuya Kawajiri, Kazuyuki Miyata. Kawajiri was twice, by the way. Ryan Healy, Francisco Trinaldo, John Alessio, Toby Amata, Luis Palomino, Jacob Volkman. I mean, this guy's fought a bunch of really, really tough guys, and he's been fighting professionally since the year 2000. Now, you look at a guy like that, and you realize that maybe just in the last few years is when he's truly reached his peak potential. Like, now he's really fighting smart. Now his shots are looking a lot more accurate. Now he's able to really knowing when to switch from one position to the next and maximize positional control, when to really go for these submissions. Like, when you look at some of those older fights, like the Toby Amata fight, for example, and realize, like, okay, maybe he's kind of jumping for that a bit early. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a professional fighter. He is. So he clearly has a better idea of what he's doing. But now you kind of see the gears in his head turning and how he approaches fighting being somewhat different. So, this isn't a situation where they're just putting some scrub out there for Gaethje to maul. You're putting in an established, credible veteran who's been in there against some amazing opposition, and he's done fairly well on some nights. He's done not so well on some others, but he's had a lot of really close bouts against really, really good opponents. Gaethje, on the other hand, is a guy who's been undefeated so far, but as you mentioned, and this is the biggest qualm that I have, is that he takes way too much damage in his fights. And I have to wonder if Firmino is going to be the guy that finally puts his lights out. If maybe this is the one guy that eventually gets that one good shot, just that one well-placed shot that starts to really bring things down a bit. Not necessarily knock him out in one glance. I mean, that's, that probably possible. But, again, how likely is that to happen? So, again, smart money's going to be on Gaethje because he's complete. He's got his leg kicks. He's got his timing. He's still growing and maturing as a fighter. He's got a great team. He's got an excellent and very underrated coach. He's got a lot of things. He's got the wind at his back here, really. But at the same time, do not, under any circumstances, count out Firmino here. This could be a very, very good fight. It could end up being a pretty close fight in the end. So any sort of anyone thinking that this is going to end in the first 20, 30 seconds, you might end up with a couple of surprises here. In fact, Gaethje might end up with a couple of surprises most of all. I'm still picking Gaethje, but expect this to be a hell of a lot better than what some people think.
Yeah, I think the thing to note here is that Luis Firmino has never been knocked out over 26 fights. So, I mean, he definitely has the chin to eat a Gaethje haymaker and return something of his own.
He's been submitted, but never knocked out.
Yeah, he got submitted in his last fight to Brian Foster, who got his leg absolutely mangled by Justin Gaethje. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be definitely a tough test for Gaethje. And I spoke to Trevor Whitman a couple months back. So, and he was telling me that they kind of expected Firmino was going to be their next opponent. So he's been prepping for Firmino for a little bit now. Definitely before Firmino fought Brian Foster. So who knows, man? I definitely got to lean Gaethje. He's on such a tear. He should be the favorite here, but this is definitely a dangerous fight for him.
Yeah.
But on that note, do you have any final thoughts or any remarks for the upcoming year?
Yeah, just want to come back to the Rizin thing for just 1 minute, just to briefly remind folks, if you're going to be, if you're a little on the fence as to whether or not to watch, some of the names that are going to be on really worth checking out. Gabby Garcia will not be fighting the 50-year-old pro wrestler or 51-year-old pro wrestler and member of parliament that she was set to fight. She's going to be fighting a 49-year-old pro wrestler who lost to the previous opponent she was scheduled to face. But that's all fun and gravy. Rina Kubota, very exciting kickboxer. She's on the card as well as Max Sakurai. Andy Nguyen, a Vegas-based fighter. She's going to be coming out there against Kid Yamamoto's sister, Miyu. That should be a hell of a lot of fun. Her son, Ursin, is going to be taking on Hideo Takoro. Again, wrestler versus wrestler, very high-paced, crazy fight. All of this worth checking out. Crazy Horse Bennett will not be on this card. He had to pull out for some reason, so do not expect him to be there. It's Japan, people. What are you going to do? And as far as World Series goes, enjoy your New Year. I mean, listen, what are you going to do? You can either, if you got nothing else to do, why not check it out while you're waiting for dinner and everything else to happen? But other than that, it is what it is.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us. You can find Vic on Twitter at Vic M. Rodriguez. You can find me on Twitter at The Eddie Mercado. If you like this, go ahead and hit that like button. It's the thumbs up down there. If you don't like it, skip the dislike button. Give us a thumbs up anyways and tell us how we can make the show better in the comments. We'll be back next week with all of our shows, Vivisections. 6th round tomorrow night will be me and Kid Nate for the UFC 207 Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunes post-fight recap. And go be a good person.